voice of free speech. The truth delivered. Common sense for the American people. Welcome to the Scott Jennings Show.
President Trump moving the final pieces of war into place in the Middle East. We'll have the latest reporting on whether Trump intends to attack Iran. Doctors Without Borders admits finally that yes indeed, Hamas is operating out of the hospitals in Gaza. And a major hospital in New York City is ending transgender treatment for minors. It is Wednesday, February the 18th, Ash Wednesday. This is Common Sense for the American people. I'm Scott Jennings reporting here on Salem. Coming up this hour, by the way, I'm going to have a serious conversation with Charles Layman of the Manhattan Institute about the legalization and liberalization of marijuana laws in this country and the emerging regrets over this. You know, even the New York Times editorial board has recently admitted to being wrong about this. We'll discuss the facts about marijuana in the United States coming up at 33 minutes past the hour. We start with the news today, and we begin with Iran. There are talks going on between the United States and Iran, but a deal on the regime's nuclear ambitions seems unlikely. And all the while, the president has moved a massive, and I mean a massive amount of military firepower into the region. It seems that we are closer to war than many people realize. According to reporting from Axios this morning, this war could be protracted, a weeks-long campaign, not like the pinpoint in-and-out operation that we saw in Venezuela. This war would be conducted jointly with the Israelis. What is the case for war? Let's listen to Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas. He laid it out on Fox News this morning. Here's Cut 7.
Yeah, Sean, I think that's well said. It's useful to remember Iran has never won a war, but it's never lost a negotiation. Iran is not a normal nation. Iran is a revolutionary Islamist regime that has been exporting terror and bloodshed around the world for 47 years, most notably directed against the United States and Israel, which it still chants in the streets to this day are the great Satan and the little Satan. President Trump has been clear now for more than 5 years in office. We cannot allow them to have nuclear weapons. We cannot allow them to have ballistic missiles that can threaten us and our friends, and they have to stop supporting terrorism. The military is posturing itself right now to make sure that the president has options. So if there is going to be any kind of negotiated outcome, it's something that's negotiated from a position of strength, not what Joe Biden and Barack Obama did, negotiate from a position of weakness and appease the Ayatollahs and pay them off to the tunes of billions of dollars.
Tom Cotton alluding to the U.S. military buildup in the region. Let's talk about that. The Armada currently includes 2 aircraft carriers, a dozen warships, hundreds of fighter jets, and multiple air defense systems. More than 150 U.S. military cargo flights have moved weapon systems and ammunition to the Middle East, and in just the last 24 hours, another 50 fighter jets, these are F-35s, F-22s, and F-16s, have headed to the region. We'll be keeping a close eye on this here at the show. And as the U.S. prepares for war in the Middle East, the Trump administration continues to push for peace between Russia and Ukraine, but talks happening in Geneva don't appear to be yielding much fruit. Talks between the 3 countries, a trilateral meeting, Russia, Ukraine, United States, these have concluded without a major breakthrough towards peace. Let's move now to New York City. Residents there are finding out what happens when you elect an avowed socialist mayor. What happens is tax increases, major tax increases. Mamdani, the new mayor, has proposed a nearly 10% increase in property taxes in the city if Democrats in the state legislature refuse to enact a wealth tax. Mamdani says there is a $5.4 billion budget hole that he must fill. Let's listen to the mayor in cut number 4.
There are 2 paths to bridge this gap. The first is the most sustainable and the fairest path. This is the path of ending the drain on our city and raising taxes on the richest New Yorkers and the most profitable corporations. The onus for resolving this crisis should not be placed on the backs of working and middle-class New Yorkers. If we do not fix this structural imbalance, and do not heed the calls of New Yorkers to raise taxes on the wealthy, this crisis will not disappear. It will simply return, year after year, forcing harder and harsher choices each time. And if we do not go down the first path, the city will be forced down a second, more harmful path. Faced with no other choice, the city would have to exercise the only revenue lever fully within our own control. We would have to raise property taxes.
A $5.4 billion shortfall in the city budget. Did you know that New York City has spent over $8.8 billion on asylum seeker services from 2023 to 2025? Asylum seekers. These are illegal immigrants to the United States. So Mamdani is now proposing to raise taxes on American citizens to continue to pay for housing and health care for illegal aliens. That is the new Democratic plan, folks. I encourage you to pay attention. And while Mamdani is raising taxes in New York City, it seems that Trump has successfully cut taxes for a great many Americans. Early tax filers are enjoying bigger refunds compared to the same time last year, according to the IRS. As of February the 6th, tax refunds averaging $2,290, which is up nearly 11% from the same point last year. Filers are benefiting from larger checks due to new tax provisions in the One Big Beautiful Bill signed by President Trump last July. Quick word from our friends and partners at Child Help. This is something every parent, maybe even every grandparent, needs to hear. More kids are being targeted online through gaming platforms, social media, and messaging apps. Big tech, these gaming apps, they're not doing what they need to do to protect our kids. These companies profit from screen time and engagement, and predators slip through the cracks. Families are paying the price. Child Help hears from children every day who were contacted through these games and these apps. Kids who were groomed, manipulated, or threatened by adults pretending to be somebody else. One boy reached out to Child Help's chat hotline. They run the National Child Abuse Hotline. Little boy reached out. He was terrified and ashamed. An adult that he met in an online game was demanding photos and threatening to lie to his parents if he didn't comply. That chat may have saved that little boy's life. And this is where Child Help matters, and this is where you come in. For a donation of $27, you can fund one of those calls, one of those moments of outreach between a terrified child and Child Help. Just $27 could save a child's life. If big tech won't protect our kids, we'll have to do it. And you can do it by donating to Child Help. Go to childhelp.org/Scott or text Child Help to 94878. $27. I'm a personal donor. I wouldn't ask you to donate to something that I don't donate to, and I would ask you to donate to Child Help today. The American cultural pendulum continues to swing back toward sanity. A major Manhattan hospital is closing its program for providing transgender services to minors. NYU Langone Health has made this announcement following the Trump administration saying in December that it would pull federal dollars from any hospital providing gender transition treatments for adolescents, things like puberty blockers, hormone therapy, or surgery. This is the latest in a string of hospitals ending transgender surgeries for minors, and it's happening even as leading Democrats like Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear continue to argue for transgender mutilation for minors as a central part of their presidential campaigns. Back in the Middle East, an admission from a left-wing group called Doctors Without Borders. They have suspended all non-critical services at one of Gaza's largest hospitals, Nasser Hospital, alleging the facility was being used by what they called armed men. Armed men in Gaza. Wonder who that could be. While the pro-Palestinian propaganda mouthpieces denied it for 2 years, finally, Doctors Without Borders admits the truth. Hamas is in fact using hospitals as bases and for cover in Gaza. Welcome to reality, folks. A word about aches and pains today. This coming from Tom in Texas, 85-year-old Tom. Pain was keeping him from riding his bike and flying small aircraft as a flight instructor. So he does something about it. He tries Relief Factor, and now lower back and hip pain virtually gone. Even long-standing trigger finger issues have started to improve. In the Jennings household, we've been using Relief Factor for some months. I can personally attest it does make a difference in your life. It has made a difference in my father's life. He's no spring chicken, but he's hopping around like one thanks to Relief Factor. If pain is holding you back from doing the things that you love, say playing with your grandkids, going to work, hobbies, golf, whatever, my advice, try Relief Factor's 3-week quick start and see how it works for you. It's very simple. 1-800-4-RELIEF or visit relieffactor.com. 1-800-4-RELIEF or visit relieffactor.com. When we come back, Andrew Kerr from the Free Beacon is here. We'll get his latest reporting on Maryland Governor Wes Moore. Stay with us.
Hey, it's Scott. Listen, when I prep for my CNN debates, I need to know exactly where the national conversation is headed. And it turns out it's helpful to know that in your everyday life as well. And that's why I tried out Free Spoke. Now, it's my go-to place for search and for news. When you use Free Spoke, it's a search platform that gives you the full story. You get information from the left, you get it from the right, you get non-mainstream, you get independent journalists, you get podcast insights. What you get from Free Spoke is the full story all in one place. And here's the thing, when you search on Free Spoke, you know they are not going to sell your data. It's quite something, actually. It's fast, it's private, it's unbiased. Free Spoke helps me research topics and make sure that I understand the full picture. You can have this tool as well. Just go to freespoke.com/Jennings to download their app for free. And as an exclusive for my listeners, use promo code Jennings after you download it and get 35% off the premium version. You go ad-free and you unlock deeper elite tools to have control over your information. So don't rely on incomplete information. Take control of your own information environment. See every perspective so you can think for yourself, just like I do before every debate.
Conversations and stories you simply won't hear from the mainstream media. It's the Scott Jennings Show.
It is Wednesday, February 18th. Common sense for the American people. Scott Jennings is here on Salem. Welcoming into the program today, intrepid reporter Andrew Kerr from the Washington Free Beacon. Andrew, welcome back to the show. We've been talking about some of your reporting lately on Maryland Governor Wes Moore. You are hot on the trail of Governor Moore and some of his fabrications in his own personal biography. Why don't you elaborate for us?
Hey, thanks for having me on, Scott. Yeah, so I've got two reports out on the Free Beacon the past couple weeks. One examining his claim that he's was ever considered a foremost expert on radical Islam based on a thesis that he published as an Oxford graduate student. The only problem there is that Oxford doesn't have a copy of the thesis on file with his library, and now Wes Moore says he's not going to waste a second of his time finding this document, which he used in his interview process for a prestigious White House fellowship in 2006. So there's that. And then the second story that we had was...
Wait, Andrew, hold on. Let me ask you a question. Did Wes Moore graduate from Oxford?
He did, yeah. He completed his studies as a Master's of Letters program, but the interesting caveat is that he has not walked at a graduation ceremony. So he doesn't have the formal certificate, but he did complete his degree program. The problem, though, is that he cannot walk at a graduation ceremony until he files his thesis with the Oxford's library. He doesn't have the thesis anymore. He's never submitted it. So apparently it's common for Oxford graduates to not go to the graduation ceremony or to hold that off for several years. But if Wes Moore was planning to make some kind of show of that, like potentially, ahead of the 2028 presidential race, he can't. He doesn't have the thesis anymore. He can't find it. So it could be a problem for him.
And the other reporting you have has to do with his family's background in South Carolina, where he appears to have been telling a bit of a yarn about how his family came to be. Elaborate.
Yeah, so this is a story that was the center of his 2022 stump speech. The story goes that his great-grandfather was a prominent racial equality preacher in South Carolina in the 1920s. His preaching got on the wrong side of the KKK. They chased him out of town. He had to flee in the dark of night, exiled to Jamaica. And then his grandfather, who was 6 years old at the time of this traumatic escape, vows to return to America, even though it casts him out because of the color of his skin, where he eventually raises Wes Moore to become the Maryland's first black governor. The actual story, though, it turns out there's an enormous amount of documentation on the life and career of Wes Moore's great-grandfather. His name was the Reverend Josiah Johnson Thomas. I found that he worked at he preached at an Episcopal church in Pineville, South Carolina in the early 1920s, and then he made it orderly and public transfer to Jamaica, which was his home country. And it turns out that a very prominent pastor in Jamaica had unexpectedly died in December of 1924. Like, the governor of Jamaica, sent a telegram expressing his regret that he couldn't attend the funeral. Wes Moore, his great-grandfather, 1 week later, it receives a formalized transfer to Jamaica, and then first thing that happens when he arrives back in Jamaica is that he's appointed to succeed that pastor who had unexpectedly died. So the actual story is that he just got a job transfer. And when he was working in South Carolina, this church in Pineville, South Carolina, the Episcopal Church of South Carolina reported that particular church had a great relationship with the white community. And just a few months after the great-grandfather returned to Jamaica, that its work with the color that they call it the colored work was in a quote most prosperous condition. So there's just no evidence whatsoever that Wes Moore's great-grandfather had any sort of run-ins with the Ku Klux Klan. He actually was working at a church that had a great relationship with the white community.
So what we have here is Wes Moore passing on a fabricated family history. We have Wes Moore unable to authenticate his claims about his Oxford thesis. This is on top of, did he make up some story about a military honor and his application for something at some point?
Yeah, so that application for his White House fellowship where he discusses the thesis, he also said that he was awarded a Bronze Star for his service in Afghanistan, which was not true. He did end up getting a Bronze Star. It's one of the last things that Joe Biden did in office. So last year, Wes Moore, pants on fire this Bronze Star lie, and then they arranged for him to get this medal in December of 24, 6 weeks before Biden leaves office.
Well, Andrew, if you need to fix something in a fabricated personal biography, who better to call than Joe Biden, the king of fabricating his own personal biography? Read Andrew Kerr's reporting in the Washington Free Beacon. Very compelling stuff. Andrew, we'll have you back. Thanks for all the work that you do. When we come back, a major conversation about marijuana legalization in the United States. You don't want to miss it. Stay with us.
Hey, it's Scott Jennings. Depending on where you live, crime may be skyrocketing, and you may already own a firearm. But before you face the financial, legal, and emotional weight of pulling the trigger, there's a smarter option. It's called Byrna. That's B-Y-R-N-A. Byrna makes a less lethal launcher that fires tear gas and kinetic rounds designed to stop an attacker for up to 40 minutes. That gives you time to escape and call for help without deadly consequences. Their best-selling compact launcher is sleek, slim, and incredibly powerful. It's about the size of a smartphone, and it is ideal for concealed carry. It's comfortable, discreet, and confidence-building. It fires at 400 feet per second with serious stopping power, enough to shut down a threat fast without the legal and moral complexity of lethal force. Byrna is proudly American. Over 80% of the components are U.S. sourced. Every Byrna launcher is hand-assembled in Fort Wayne, Indiana. With over 750,000 of these things sold worldwide, Byrna is best in class. It's legal in all 50 states. No background checks. Comes right to your door. Learn more at Byrna.com, Byrna.com.
News, comment, and the stories and facts the mainstream media refuses to discuss. It's the Scott Jennings Show.
And it is Wednesday, February 18th. Common sense for the American people. Scott Jennings is with you here on Salem. Broadcasting live today. The world travels of Scott Jennings continue. Broadcasting live from Amelia Island, Florida. Got a big event here this evening, and we're on location yet again. So I'm reading the New York Times editorial section the other day. I read it so that you don't have to. And I happened upon a headline that finally prompted me to have this conversation I want to have on the air today. The headline said, and I quote, "It's time for America to admit that it has a marijuana problem." Let me read a little bit from the editorial. 13 years ago, no state allowed marijuana for recreational purposes. Today, most Americans live in a state that allows them to buy and smoke a joint. Supporters of legalization predicted that it would bring few downsides. In our editorials, we described marijuana addiction and dependence as, quote, relatively minor problems. Many advocates went further and claimed that marijuana was a harmless drug that might even bring net health benefits. They also said that legalization might not lead to greater use. It is now clear that many of these predictions were wrong. That is what the New York Times admitted recently. For years, they pushed for marijuana legalization, and now they realize this is a deep, deep problem that the United States has made for itself. On the line with me to have this conversation, a scholar, Charles Layman, a senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute and a senior editor of City Journal. Charles's work focuses primarily on the public policy of antisocial behavior, including crime, drugs, and public disorder. His work has appeared in outlets like The Times, The Atlantic, The Wall Street Journal, and National Review. Charles Layman, welcome into your inaugural appearance on the Scott Jennings Show.
Very happy to be here.
Yeah, glad you're here, and thank you for bringing all of your research and insights to this. Were you surprised to see the New York Times make this admission that they had been, in fact, wrong to push for marijuana legalization the other day?
You know, on the one hand, yes, because as they admitted, the Times has been really vocal in its support of legalization. They've been part of the vanguard, making legalizing marijuana just sort of the de facto respectable opinion in the United States among the class of people who read the Times in particular. On the other hand, you know, I was not that surprised because I know that even in certain corners of the Times, people are looking around and saying, wait a second, this isn't going exactly as it was promised. We don't like what's happening. I was published by the Times Magazine writing about what a disaster the legalization of marijuana has been in New York State. And so, you know, I think even progressives are starting to wake up and go, maybe this isn't what we were expecting.
So to level set this conversation a little bit, you're critical of legalizing marijuana. You have been for a very long time. I am personally opposed to it myself. I don't like the legalization of it. I don't like the liberalization of it. I don't like the liberalized drug culture in America. I didn't like it, frankly, the other day, a few weeks ago, when President Trump loosened up some federal restrictions around this, because I don't think that it leads to national renewal. It clearly leads to societal decline. I assume you agree with that. And we have millions upon millions of people who are now regularly using marijuana, and it is doing nothing positive in their lives. In fact, in most of their lives, I would argue, and I assume you would, Charles, that it's doing something quite negative.
Yeah, the Times cites research from Jonathan Calkins at CMU, who's one of the smartest guys out there working on this issue, who estimates that something like 18 million Americans are daily or near daily users of marijuana. A roughly equivalent figure could be diagnosed as having a cannabis use disorder, which is the politically correct and/or-scientific term for addiction to marijuana. And, you know, I think advocates of legalization will say those people aren't going to die from weed. And by and large, that's true, with the exception of death by car crash or accident. But there are real and meaningful social and health harms associated with legalization. There are harms to lungs, to the heart, to the brain, particularly to the developing brain. We have increasingly ironclad science that says there's a connection between heavy marijuana use and schizophrenia. And there are also harms, again, like car crashes, like rising homelessness, like the pervasive stench of marijuana in our cities. Are these things, you know, thousands upon thousands of deaths? No. Are they a social problem that we don't necessarily need to tolerate? Absolutely. And, you know, I think to your point about American renewal, I was pretty vocal about being skeptical of the president's rescheduling of marijuana to being a Schedule III substance. And my argument that I tried to make in public was the president believes in national greatness. He believes in people going out and doing great things. He believes in beautiful, clean cities. And the legalization of marijuana or the relaxation of restrictions on it accomplishes none of those goals. It just makes an addictive, harmful product more widely available in a way that will harm the people who are using most of it, with very little benefit to them or to everybody else.
Some more statistics in our conversation here with Charles Lehman from the Manhattan Institute. About 64 million Americans reported using marijuana in 2024. That is significantly up from previous years. Gallup poll, this is also from 2024, indicates 15% of American adults actively use, more than double what it was in 2013. Marijuana use doubling among U.S. adults over the last decade, with significant increases in past month and past year use. Nearly 42% of current users are considered intensive, meaning daily or near daily, according to recent estimates. These numbers are staggering. How can a country hope to have a functioning workforce if this many people, millions upon millions of people, are debilitated with marijuana use on a daily basis?
Well, I think an important thing to point out in those statistics is that the growth in serious or intensive or addictive use is way bigger than the general growth in use. You pointed to there's been a doubling in the share of people who are regular marijuana smokers. That's going from about 7% to 15%. Alcohol users are something like 70% of the U.S. population. So 15% doesn't sound that big, but I think what you have to realize is that you have this sort of bifurcation in the marijuana consuming population. There are a handful of people who consume a little bit. Most people consume none at all. And then a large majority of the people who are using on a daily, compulsive, multiple times a day basis. That means that they are wake and bake stoners, and that severely affects their competence in the workforce. It means people who are driving high. It means people who are driving your Uber high. It means people who are operating heavy machinery while high. It also means people who don't form family connections, who are using drugs rather than going out and meeting members of the opposite sex, forming families, going to church, doing all those things that produce a healthy, functioning, robust society. So, 20 million people is a substantial fraction of the population. Not all those people are dysfunctional, but many of them are. And so it's a big fraction of our fellow citizens who are just sort of sidelining themselves from American life.
How did we get here? It seemed like for a very long time, most people in American culture, most policymakers, most responsible people realized that marijuana use was not something you aspired to, that this was not something that was going to be of any benefit to your life, to your family, to your community. And all of a sudden, it feels like we just gave up on holding back that idea. We just gave up on it, and states started to pass it, and localities started to pass it. What do you think happened? What was the moment where people decided, okay, fine, we're not interested in fighting this battle. We're not interested in holding this back any longer?
There are two periods of marijuana liberalization in American history. One is in the 1970s, where there's this brief push towards decriminalization that burns out by the 1980s. And then the other is this period of sustained liberalization in the 2000s that I think is driven in large part by concerns about the harms of marijuana prohibition, which are often overstated, although in some cases real. We looked at particularly the large number of people who were arrested every year for marijuana-related offenses, and we looked at the racial disparities in those arrest rates. And amid the climate of general support for criminal justice reform, some of it merited, a lot of it not, we said, well, we don't think that there's a lot of rationale behind the criminalization of marijuana. We think this doesn't make a lot of sense. It's just a harmless plant. It's doing all of this harm. And so, I think this is a constant feature of prohibition. Where the drug is well controlled, you mostly see the downsides of controlling it. Where the drug is not well controlled, you see the downsides of not controlling it. But because we lived in a regime where marijuana was relatively well suppressed, we said, why don't we take our foot off the gas? It will be fine. Because we don't remember what it is like to have a culture that consumes marijuana heavily to have a society that is heavily addicted to marijuana. So, I think absence makes the heart grow fonder, and we had an absence of marijuana, and that created an opening for its legalization.
Is it true, Charles, that the kinds of marijuana products that are available to people today are much different, much more potent than what was available decades ago?
Yes, and you see that both in the Drug Enforcement Administration seizure data, where the rate of the percentage by weight of THC, the active ingredient in marijuana, essentially has been creeping up steadily for years and years. It's gone from something like 5% in the 1990s to 20% plus in the most recent data. But you also see this in terms of the potency of the products now widely available on the legal market. Because we've legalized marijuana, companies can get innovative. They are better at distilling out what consumers want. And disproportionately what consumers want, particularly addicted consumers, is potency. And so today you can buy products that are 80, 90% THC by volume, by shatter, by wax. The dose is very different. That experience is very different. But if you are somebody who is used to consuming 3 to 5 joints a day, if you're somebody who's getting high constantly throughout the day, or who is vaping continuously throughout the day, then you need that much THC to sustain your experience, to deal with your dependency on that drug. So we've absolutely seen an increase in potency, and the increase in potency is downstream of legalization. Part of what keeps drugs weak is prohibition.
That's Charles Layman, that voice you're hearing. He is a scholar at the Manhattan Institute. We're having a conversation today about the perils of the legalization and liberalization of marijuana in our society. We're going to have more with Charles on the other side of this break. First, a quick word from our friends at Patriot Mobile. When it comes to wireless service, there's only one company that you should choose. It's Patriot Mobile. The reason you should choose Patriot Mobile, well, there's 2 reasons. Number one, they have great service. You'll get the same great or better service on all 3 major U.S. carriers. But number 2, this company shares your values and they invest in your values. So imagine when you write your cell phone bill every month, it goes to a company that actually believes in what you believe, Christian conservative values, instead of another corporation that who knows what they believe in, probably something very different. This is why you should switch to Patriot Mobile. They have unlimited data plans, mobile hotspots, international roaming, and more. You can keep your number, keep your phone, upgrade your phone, whatever you want. But to take a stand, you would switch to Patriot Mobile. Go to patriotmobile.com/Scott or call 972-PATRIOT and use promo code Scott, and you'll get a free month of service. patriotmobile.com/Scott, 972-PATRIOT. Make the switch today. More on marijuana legalization when we come back. It's Scott Jennings here on Salem. Stay with us.
The man who made CNN safe for conservatives again. Here's Scott Jennings.
Conversation going on here with Charles Layman, scholar with the Manhattan Institute. Charles recently wrote a piece called The Case for Prohibiting Vice. It's in National Affairs. I'm going to quote from it. In 2023, a record 62 million Americans smoke pot. 17 million now use it daily or near daily. 1 in 12 young adults used a hallucinogen. 1 in 18 misused prescription stimulants such as Adderall. Another 2.6 million Americans over the age of 12 took meth. Overdoses still claim the lives of 70,000 Americans annually. The majority died using synthetic opioids like fentanyl. Half of American men have a sports betting account, up from almost 0 7 years ago. And iGaming, gambling via casino apps on your phone, is now legal in 7 states. By some estimates, pornography now generates more revenue than Hollywood. And OnlyFans creators collectively make more than players in the National Basketball Association. Charles Layman, you're painting a bleak picture of how our society is spending its time and money right now. Care to elaborate?
Yeah, I'm a lot of fun at parties. I think there has been a comprehensive shift in how our society consumes what in that article I refer to as vice. It's obviously an antiquated term, but I think it's the best term we have available to explain what is the common feature of all of those different products that you listed: gambling, porn, drugs, hard drugs, soft drugs, quote unquote. The other thing that I like to emphasize here is that all of this is very recent. If you turn the clock back 10 years, marijuana is illegal in 40 plus states. OnlyFans has not even launched yet. It launches at the end in 2016. Sports gambling is illegal everywhere in the United States except for Nevada, and will be for another 2 years. Hallucinogens have not been decriminalized. Drug possession has not been decriminalized and won't be for another 4 years. There has been a radical change in how we treat these products relatively recently. Some of that is a cultural liberalization, but a lot of it is just policy liberalization combined with technological change. The Supreme Court struck down the federal ban on sports gambling in 2018. Legalization happened through the ballot box of marijuana. The Supreme Court's treatment of pornography has been a persistent phenomenon, but I think has shaped the availability of these goods through our phones, or the availability of sort of direct consumer pornography in the form of OnlyFans. And then again, you talk about, being able to gamble on your phone is a qualitatively different and more harmful experience than having to go down to the casino and place a bet. So there really has been a dramatic change in the availability of all of these goods, and that is downstream of this interaction of we got softer on them at the same time that they were able to become much more potent because of technology.
And we swallowed a lot of very rosy arguments for these things. With gambling, a lot of states made the argument, we'll tax it and use the proceeds to improve education. Marijuana, it's medicinal. Pornography, and OnlyFans, it's empowering to women. And so we attached a lot of slogans to these campaigns to get these things legalized. And of course, people bought it. The media largely cheered it on. And now here we are. Charles, where are we headed from here, in your opinion? Do you believe we have reached a moment in American culture where people realize, whoa, we've gone way too far on all these vices? Or have we yet to reach the tipping point of people saying enough is enough and we need to turn back the clock here?
I think that there are two parts there, which is the enough is enough and turning back the clock. There is, I think, increasing appetite for some kind of objection to this proliferation of vice. I point to survey evidence from Gallup that shows a majority of Americans now believe that marijuana is actively harmful to its users and society. Sports gambling is unpopular both in polling and in my personal experience. The number of people I know who are otherwise committed libertarians who have said to me, I'm with you on sports gambling, is astonishing. People are increasingly concerned about porn. They're concerned about porn in their kids' schools. They're concerned about porn in college. They're concerned about porn everywhere. I think everyone sort of recognizes that culturally we went too far over the past 5 to 10 years on these products. The challenge in my mind is
30 seconds.
We aren't quite sure what to do about it, and we don't have the arguments, the ideas that are going to validate how we can make a change. So, what I'm trying to do is say, how can I give you ideological permission to say it's okay to not like this stuff? You don't have to feel bad about it.
Well, let me give you permission, everybody out there listening. It is okay to realize this stuff is bad for culture, and it's bad for society, and it's bad if you want to preserve Western civilization. Charles Lehman, you've been a great guest. Thanks a lot from the Manhattan Institute. 1 hour down, 1 hour to go. It's Scott on Salem. Stay with us.
If the leftists haven't had enough yet, there's more. This is the Scott Jennings Show.
It is Wednesday, February 18th. Common sense for the American people. Scott Jennings here on Salem, broadcasting live from Amelia Island, Florida today. The world travels of Scott Jennings continue. Quick check of the headlines here as we begin hour number 2. The thing that they say never happens, it's happening again, this time in Kentucky. They say illegal immigrants can't get driver's licenses, right? Well, now 5 people in Kentucky have been indicted for selling driver's licenses to non-citizens. WLKY TV has the story in cut number 1.
A new indictment describes the elaborate scheme targeting people who didn't know how to get a driver's license in Kentucky. The document says starting no later than November 1st, 2023, Raul Teles Ojeda, Lozaro Alejandro Castelo Rojas, and Robert Danger Correa recruited people who were immigrants and offered to get them a license by avoiding a line and bypassing testing requirements at the driver licensing regional office at the NIA Center. Those applicants were allegedly told fees ranged from $200 to $1,500 and were made to believe the process was legal. The indictment says the suspects often escorted applicants on the day of their appointment and told them where to wait and when to enter the NIA Center. Many of the applicants had difficulty speaking English. As part of the scheme, Danita Wilson and Ariel Matthews, who worked as temp workers at the NIA Center, are accused of manually changing the status of driver's license records so the system would recognize licenses that did not exist.
Yet more examples of the fact that we have an illegal immigration crisis in our country. Remember that the next time a Democrat tells you we have to keep as many people here as possible. President Trump is going to visit Georgia tomorrow. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt briefing right now at the White House. She says he is going to stop at 2 local businesses in North Georgia and talk about affordability in his speech. He's also down there to boost, I assume, Clay Fuller, who is one of the Republicans running to replace Marjorie Taylor Greene in that special election that comes up in a few days. And also, Kentucky lawmakers passed legislation to outlaw diversity, equity, and inclusion at public colleges and universities in March 2025. The Republican-led legislature overrode a veto by Governor Andy Beshear to pass the bill, which bans DEI funding, diversity training, and the use of diversity statements in hiring and admissions. But did it work? Kicking off our second hour of the show, we have the president of the organization Accuracy in Media here to discuss his group's investigation into the University of Kentucky and to explain to us how DEI is still alive and well in our colleges despite laws like the one I just described. Adam Gillette, welcome back to the Scott Jennings Show.
Thank you so much for having me back.
Yeah, appreciate you being here. Let's kick off this conversation by playing a video. You've got some undercover videos that your organization has come up with where you talk to people at the University of Kentucky about DEI and whether it is still operating. Let's play cut number 3 and come back to it.
Most of our faculty are pretty progressive. We can't actually use those words because, people are dumb.
And you went on to explain that you were still continuing to do the DEI work. What people are dumb?
If we hear about issues with respect to that, we will move to remedy that and correct that.
So, Adam, tell us, how did you uncover this story of DEI still operating at the University of Kentucky? Did you get a tip? Is that why you went to Lexington?
Well, unfortunately, the higher education in America in 2026 is such that you don't need a tip. You only need to show up. We cast a wide net. We go to red state universities where they have a state ban on DEI in addition to the executive order. And what we find at university after university is that these activist administrators are more than happy to circumvent state laws, ignore state laws, break state laws, bend state laws. And the University of Kentucky is definitely one of the worst.
We have another clip from your investigation. Let's roll this. This is cut number 2.
One of the things we think about, what are things going to look like to use that without use that
Exactly. It's an inclusive learning history. It's like
absolutely.
Okay, so like diversity.
Our history, I was going to say our history department.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I'm still in the.
This is, I was going to say, our faculty.
Adam, who are these people that you're talking to here at the University of Kentucky, and why do you think they so willingly admit to breaking the law?
We talk to a variety of administrators in a variety of different departments, and we also go and visit the people who previously had the DEI titles. I'll tell you, if you want a get-rich-quick scheme in 2026, get into the business card business, because all of these people just change their job title and continue doing the exact same work. And we meet with them quite briefly, but they do think that we are an ideological ally, and they're telling a complete stranger off the street how they're circumventing, bending, or breaking a state law. I always wonder, if we met them for 6 months and earned their trust, or a year or two, what horrible things might we learn about then? You know, Kentucky's law doesn't prohibit DEI from being in the curriculum, and I think they use that as a bit of a loophole, but they claim to be in compliance with state law. At the same time, they brag to us about how they change the words, change the titles, which they have to do because, quote unquote, people are dumb. Well, generally, people who are adhering to the law don't need to engage in the level of deception they're engaging in at Kentucky.
Adam, your investigation, and it sounds like, by the way, you have some more videos that you are about to release on the University of Kentucky. Do you raise these matters to the administration at the University of Kentucky? Have you sent it up to the university president's office, for instance?
In this instance, we actually spoke with a PR spokesman who, of course, insisted that they're in compliance with the law. We've also coordinated with some members of the state legislature and the attorney general's office. You know, they do use their excuse that, no, it's merely curriculum oriented. But here's the thing, the administrative bloat in higher education in America is out of control. These universities now have administrators who outnumber the faculty, and they're essentially taxpayer-funded activist positions. They'll claim their work is all curriculum-related, but when they brag about their levels of deception, and when they show the disdain they have for the taxpayers who pay their salaries by saying people are dumb, it certainly looks rotten to me.
Adam, are you in touch with anyone in the Kentucky State Legislature? Obviously, this law that they passed in 2025 is being ignored or exploited by the University of Kentucky. Do you think they are planning any changes to tighten up the law to try to go after universities who are circumventing it?
We are coordinating with them, and Kentucky really needs a strict Kansas-style law. Kansas is the only state with a really strong DEI ban that has not only a reporting mechanism, but specific legal consequences for those who break the law, which sounds like an incredibly novel idea. Now, the challenge, of course, is if the law becomes so much that it's micromanaging faculty members and how they can teach and what they can teach, that could be counterproductive. We should be able to trust faculty members to actually teach in an honest way. If you want to talk about a controversial topic, talk about it, but don't indoctrinate. But I go to these administrative buildings, like in Kentucky and elsewhere, and I see just far-left propaganda posters everywhere, far-left books on all of these bookshelves. And you would swear that you're in the Democratic Socialists of America office, not a public university. To me, that's a problem, and that's why these people can't be trusted.
Adam, I know you have investigations going on around the country. Any hints to where we may see you all pop up next? Any states?
Well, we just released another one from Kent State University yesterday, north of Kentucky in Ohio, where an administrator told us that all of these reforms coming from Republicans for K-12 and higher education is just to keep the white man in power. The white man wants to control education, is what this radical white woman told us. We have more coming from Ohio, Kentucky, Kansas. You know, unfortunately, if it's a red state with a DEI ban, they're more than likely breaking the law.
That voice you're hearing on the show today, Adam Gillette, he is with the organization called Accuracy in Media. They are doing some very important undercover investigative journalism. And if you're interested in this story in Kentucky, by the way, you can go to this website, DEIinkentucky.com, and you can learn about Adam's investigation there and also send a message to Kentucky lawmakers that you don't want DEI in public universities. Adam, thanks for joining us today. We look forward to having you back in the very near future. A quick word from our friends at Relief Factor. And by friends, I mean people who are using Relief Factor around the country to great success. This one is Keith in Washington, an active man, a college athlete, a martial arts instructor, somebody teaching multiple classes a day. It started to take a toll over time. The body was breaking down. But Keith tries Relief Factor. Now knee pain gone, neck pain dropping significantly, and he was able to keep training and earn his black belt. We have countless stories here at the show from people who've used Relief Factor to get their life back. If you want to be one of those stories, sign up for the 3-week quick start. See how it works for you. Call 1-800-4-RELIEF. or visit relieffactor.com. Let us see if we can get you out of pain. It's common sense for the American people. You're listening to Scott Jennings here on Salem. When we come back, we'll talk about this CBS Colbert Tallarico story. Stay with us.
Ready for more common sense? Here's CNN's senior political commentator, New York Times best-selling author, and America's favorite political pundit, Scott Jennings.
Common sense for the American people. Scott Jennings here on Salem. I have to tell you a story this afternoon about two white guys who are colluding to hurt the political career of an African-American woman. It's a sad story. It's a tragic story. The two white males are named Stephen Colbert and James Tallarico, and the African-American woman is named Jasmine Crockett. But this story began to unfold on Monday night when James Tallarico, who is a candidate for the United States Senate in Texas running against Miss Crockett, scheduled an interview on Stephen Colbert's late-night program. And then the mayhem started. Colbert and Tallarico claimed that Donald Trump's FCC had threatened CBS not to air this interview. That turned out to be a lie, by the way. And they created this online frenzy. Oh my goodness, Donald Trump trying to keep you from hearing James Tallarico? Well, it turns out the truth is that CBS's lawyers told Stephen Colbert, hey, you're pretty close to a primary election in Texas. And if you're going to have on one of the candidates, in this case, Tallarico, you really need to have on the other candidate, Crockett. Colbert did not air the interview. In fact, they put it on YouTube instead, but that was their plan all along, for Tallarico to claim he'd been banned by Trump. Here's the forbidden interview. Go watch it. And now they're touting having raised $2.5 million online. Two white Democrats colluding to lie to you, all to hurt Jasmine Crockett. Let's listen to Jasmine Crockett. I can't believe it. I'm taking up for Jasmine Crockett. She's clearly been wronged here by these white males. Let's listen to her, cut number 5.
We actually received a phone call, and that was a little bit earlier today. And in that call, they explained that they actually told CBS that they could go ahead and move forward with the interview of James Tallarico. They just needed to offer me equal time. I did not get a request from the Colbert Show to go on. As you know, I've been on Colbert multiple times. And frankly, if we would have gotten an offer, that would have been great, but we're in the middle of early voting, so I'm kind of focused on being in Texas at this moment.
It's kind of amazing, actually. Democrats showing absolutely no respect for Jasmine Crockett. Now, Jasmine Crockett, heretofore, has been the smartest person in the Democratic Party. She's been one of the most prominent national Democrats since Donald Trump was sworn back into office. But the Democrats, who were all too happy to push Jasmine Crockett for the last year, have decided to throw her overboard because they want a white male in Texas named James Tallarico to be their nominee for Senate. Why? Tallarico is currently at the forefront of Democrats who are pushing this new theology, this idea that we have figured out that the Bible in fact supports child mutilation. And in fact, it supports unlimited abortion. And in fact, it supports open borders. Basically, James Tallarico is an evangelist for this new liberal theology that says, magically, anything that we're for, voila, is supported by biblical teachings. This is more interesting to them today than anything Jasmine Crockett is doing. I think African-American women, African-American candidates, Democrats around the country ought to take note of this. When push comes to shove, the Democratic Party, the powers that be, the cultural celebrities who prop up the Democratic Party, are all too willing to throw you overboard, to deprive you of resources and attention, if it means promoting the shiny new object in the form of white male James Tallarico or someone like him. That's all it took. That's all it took for them to broom Jasmine Crockett in the Democratic Party. When we come back, Erin Houchin of Indiana, Congresswoman, is our guest. We'll ask her about this and other topics. Stay with us here at Scott Jennings on Salem.
The voice of reason, common sense for the American people. This is the Scott Jennings Show.
It is Wednesday, February 18th. Common sense for the American people. Scott Jennings broadcasting to you on Salem. And we're broadcasting on the road today. Amelia Island, Florida is the location. We're glad to be here and thank everyone here for the hospitality and helping us get the Scott Jennings Show off the ground this afternoon. My next guest, a bright new star in the House Republican Conference in Washington, D.C. She's from Indiana. She represents the 9th Congressional District. Her name is Erin Houchin. Erin, thanks for coming on the Scott Jennings Show.
Great to be with you, Scott. Nice to hear your voice.
Great to hear your voice. I'm in Amelia Island, Florida. You're in the slightly colder confines of Indianapolis, Indiana today. And so I won't hold that over your head and taunt you too much during this conversation, but it's good to be a little southerly at the moment. Erin, let me ask you about a topical item that impacted the state of Indiana recently. It's the issue of illegal aliens and other migrants in our country who are able to get driver's license and commercial driver's license and find themselves behind the wheel of these semi-tractor trailers. 4 people, in fact, were killed in Indiana by one of these situations recently. What are you going to do about this is the question I'm hearing from a lot of conservatives out there. We've heard these stories all over the country now, and some of these states, in this case it was Pennsylvania, are handing out these CDLs. What can Congress do about this to crack down? We've had too many fatal accidents on American roadways.
Well, you're absolutely right, Scott. This is a tragedy that unfortunately we're seeing more and more of across the country because of Joe Biden's open border policies that first allowed illegal aliens to enter the country, and then states that have exploited loopholes in the CDL application, allowing illegals to obtain commercial driver's licenses without really any information about their previous violations in other countries. This has been endangering Americans and taking innocent lives across the country. President Trump, though, is taking this issue seriously. We learned from Secretary Duffy that the loophole has been closed, and we will continue to work with the administration to make sure that unqualified and dangerous drivers, illegal aliens, cannot obtain commercial driver's licenses. Here's an interesting piece of information that should infuriate everyone even more. It's that we've been trying to allow for retired veterans who had military CDLs to be able to obtain commercial CDLs upon exiting from the military. And we can't get them to get commercial driver's licenses, but some states are handing these out to illegal immigrants. Even in Republican states, Scott, in Indiana, when I was in the state legislature, there were Republicans that were pushing for giving illegal aliens driver's licenses. This was back when my daughter was 16 years old, getting her own driver's licenses, and the requirement under the proposed law, which did not pass, which I fought vigorously, was less than what would be necessary for my own daughter to get a driver's license. No proof of identity, no proof of age, no proof that you've even had any driver training whatsoever, just an affidavit that they would sign to say, yep, I am who I say I am and I can drive. It's terrifying.
Yeah, earlier in the program, Erin, I was playing a report from Louisville, Kentucky about this whole elaborate scheme that had been uncovered where people were just simply selling driver's licenses in the state of Kentucky to illegal aliens. Many people had been indicted for doing this, and I was reflecting on my own hours spent with my own son who's trying to get his driver's license right now. He'll have to take a test and so on and so forth. And you have these people out here who are dedicated to circumventing our laws, circumventing our system and our testing, and giving driver's licenses to illegals and giving them licenses to drive these extremely dangerous vehicles. Let me connect this to another issue you're dealing with in Washington, and that is the partial government shutdown of the Department of Homeland Security. Democrats have shut down DHS because they want changes to the way ICE is enforcing our immigration law. Essentially, they want changes that would make it harder to deport illegal immigrants from our country. Do you think this is going to end anytime soon? What's the prognosis on this for you, Congresswoman Houchin?
Well, I think it's going to be quite a while before the Democrats have any common sense. We may be aging out of our congressional service before the Democrats find any common sense on this issue. But we already funded DHS in the Working Families Tax Cuts Act, in the One Big Beautiful Bill. We already funded DHS and ICE. So the only thing that they're really doing is performative, and it's hurting our TSA agents and our travel for every American citizen. It is hurting the Coast Guard and FEMA. So that is the thing that they're standing on. And those are the Americans that they're hurting for this performative stand against quote-unquote ICE. The problems that we see in Minnesota, we don't see in other parts of the country where ICE and local and state government are cooperating with the Trump administration. You see Muriel Bowser, Democrat mayor of Washington, D.C., cooperating with the Trump administration, allowing the National Guard's presence, and we have seen a dramatic drop in crime and murder in the capital city. Same story in Memphis and in Louisiana, where we have cooperation with the state and local governments, whether or not they're Republicans or Democrats. These types of problems are not happening. And I think that, Tom Homan said it best. If Minnesota would just allow for the ICE agents to take detained illegal immigrants who've been arrested by local law enforcement, a lot of these problems would not be happening. So I don't think the Democrats are going to find common sense anytime soon. This is performative for them. Understand that funding has already been issued, and those are the groups of people, as I said, that have been hurt by it.
Let me connect this issue to one more issue dealing with illegal immigration in this country, and that is the Save America Act. The Save America Act would require voter ID in federal elections and would also require first-time registrants to prove that they are U.S. citizens. You passed this out of the U.S. House. You supported it. It is now sitting in the United States Senate, and we're waiting to see what happens. But Democrats are raging against the Save America Act. Do you see any connective tissue, any through lines between the Save America Act, the lack of immigration enforcement that Democrats desire, and so on and so forth? Do you see a thread between all of these issues, Aaron?
Absolutely. I mean, we know that when Joe Biden took office, the first few executive orders he issued, he issued an executive order that opened the southern border and subjected us all to the millions of illegal immigrants that have flowed into the country, have been allowed into the country. We know that one of the second executive orders he issued was one that said that illegal immigrants will count in the census for congressional apportionment. So they want these people here. They want them to count in the census. And they certainly want those numbers to be as high as possible. They want them to be able to vote in our elections. It's why they're fighting so hard on this issue where this is an 80-20 issue. Even Democrats agree that you should show voter ID. American elections should be decided by American citizens, period. This is common sense that you should show proof of citizenship when you register to vote, and you should prove who you say you are when you cast your ballot.
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt was at the podium a few minutes ago talking about a number of issues. One of them is touting the successes of the Trump economic recovery. Let's hear from Caroline Leavitt. Let's listen to Cut 17, and we'll let Aaron Houchin respond. Cut 17.
To provide an update on the economy. We're seeing promising signs every day that 2026 is going to be a record successful year for the American people, just as President Trump promised them. The January jobs report shattered expectations, highlighting how the president's pro-growth economic agenda is fueling American prosperity. The economy added 172,000 new private sector jobs to kick off the year. That's more than 2.5 times economists' predictions. The labor force participation rate went up while the unemployment rate fell. The prime age labor force participation rate is now at its highest since 2001. Most importantly, 100% of all job creation under President Trump continues to be in the private sector. This is truly remarkable. That's 615,000 private sector jobs that have been added in President Trump's second term thus far. These are real working people. These are real American families who will be living out their American dream. Meanwhile, federal government employment has shrunk to its lowest level since 1966, saving taxpayers $29 billion annually. And all of the net job growth under President Trump has gone to native-born Americans, ending the disgraceful pattern under Joe Biden of job gains going to non-citizens and illegal aliens.
Compelling case, Congresswoman. What are you hearing from people in Indiana's 9th District?
I mean, this has been a substantial impact because of the Trump tax cuts. You know, families are keeping more of their money. Workers are keeping more of their money. Small businesses are growing. Wage rates are outpacing inflation. I mean, Caroline Leavitt, I couldn't have said it better than she did. But people are starting to feel the effects and will be starting to feel the effects of the Working Families Tax Cuts Act. You know, making these tax cuts permanent allows 7,000 or more businesses in the district to reinvest, hire more workers, and raise wages. This is a historic tax cut, a major win for families and workers across the district. This couldn't have been accomplished without the leadership of President Trump and the hard work of my colleagues in Congress in passing the Working Families Tax Cuts Act. We know that, you know, the wage rates are outpacing inflation and job creation is up. Growth is way outpacing expectations, including what we anticipated with the passage of the Working Families Tax Cuts Act. Only counted on about a 2.5% growth rate, and we're looking at an average right now of 4%. Really incredible, and it's thanks to President Trump. I think we're starting to let small businesses thrive. Deregulation is working, and we're really going to see, as President Trump has promised, this golden age of the American economy.
5 seconds. Are you still moving forward in the House Republican Conference with Budget Reconciliation 2.0? Is that still happening?
We would still love to do Budget Reconciliation 2.0. We need bills to move through the Senate. That's a great way for us to do it with fixing the filibuster or without needing the filibuster. So absolutely, we want to pursue a second bite at reconciliation.
That's Congresswoman Erin Houchin, Indiana's 9th Congressional District, one of the brightest new stars in the House Republican Conference. My friend, Erin, thanks for coming on the Scott Jennings Show. We'll look forward to having you back in the very near future. We're going to round out the hour with more from White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt. She had a lot to say on a few issues. We'll play some of that for you when we come back. It's Scott Jennings on Salem. Stay with us.
Common sense for the American people. This is the Scott Jennings Show.
Home stretch Wednesday, February 18th. It's Scott Jennings with you on Salem. In just a moment, play a couple of clips for you from Caroline Leavitt. The breaking news this afternoon is that she held a White House press briefing and made a few comments, including announcing the president's headed to Georgia tomorrow. He's going to talk affordability and a couple of stops at local small businesses. I assume he is going there also to tout Clay Fuller, who is running in this large open field to replace Marjorie Taylor Greene in Congress. But we'll get to Caroline in just a moment. First, I want to tell you that we are still preparing for the big cruise. Mike Gallagher, Scott Jennings, and a whole host of friends are going on the Gulf of America cruise. It's going to be a powerful week, November 14th through the 21st. You don't want to miss it. You can reserve your cabin on this cruise today. Text the word cruise to 94878. That's cruise. Text it to 94878. or visit scottjenningsshow.com and click on the Gulf of America cruise banner. We'll make a lot of great stops. The water is blue. The beaches are sandy. The food is delicious. The conversation will be stimulating, beguiling. I don't know. We'll have to come up with some more adjectives to describe how great this cruise is going to be. But I'd love to see you there. We're going to have a lot of fun. A luxury cruise ship, great conversation. Gallagher Jennings, the Gulf of America cruise, November of this year. Please reserve your cabin today. Text cruise to 94878. All right, Caroline Levitt back at the podium this afternoon. She had a little update on what Tom Homan did in Minneapolis to try to get the situation with immigration under control up there. Let's listen to Levitt, cut 18.
Yeah, the last time I spoke with Mr. Homan, which was just a few days ago, he assured us that nearly every single county in the state of Minnesota has agreed to notify ICE when they are releasing criminal illegal aliens from their jails. This is an unprecedented level of cooperation that we have not seen. It has led to not only cooperation to detain illegal aliens in Minnesota, which just this past week I have looked at the list. They've detained some very heinous people who none of you would want living in your communities. But has also led to a much more calm situation on the ground. We've also seen, and you've seen this with your own eyes play out, the local police and the state police have now cooperated in the arrests of left-wing agitators and criminals who are unlawfully obstructing immigration enforcement in their efforts. So this is a huge win. And again, the president sent Mr. Homan to Minnesota to do a job, and he has done it well. And I think the situation on the ground proves that.
Sounds like the White House pretty happy with what Homan was able to accomplish in Minnesota. Levitt today also talking about the Obama-era endangerment finding that EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin did away with in the last few days. Let's hear cut 19.
This is one of the largest deregulatory actions ever taken in the United States of America. And overall, it's going to save our country $1.3 trillion in regulatory burdens that have really done nothing for our country, nothing for our environment, nothing for our economy. In fact, this announcement received widespread and bipartisan praise. I think I recall seeing the editorial board of the Washington Post, of all places, even commending the president and Administrator Zeldin for this historic action last week. So there's no doubt it is going to save the American consumer money, and I'd be happy to provide that specific economic analysis to you.
All right, Caroline Levitt briefing at the White House podium this afternoon, and also talked about the possibility of an executive order on national voter ID. She was asked about that, and believe she said that it was the president's preference that Congress deal with this by passing the Save America Act. So no commitment from the president on that. Of course, you wouldn't want to take away the pressure on Congress, specifically the United States Senate, to pass that legislation. All right, wrapping up the show here. We're in Amelia Island, Florida. And I want to give a shout out to a couple of groups that brought me to Florida this week. Last night I was actually down in Naples and gave a great speech and had a great night with the folks at the James Madison Institute, a conservative public policy think tank here in Florida. You'll be hearing more about the James Madison Institute. They're sort of exporting the Florida model nationally. And tonight I'm speaking to a group of people affiliated with Hillsdale College. Hillsdale College, one of the greatest conservative universities in America, and that's why I am at Amelia Island today. So my travels have taken me to Florida, which is great, but it's always great to see great friends at James Madison and Hillsdale, and I'm grateful for their hospitality. Thanks for listening. We'll be back tomorrow. It's Common Sense for the American people. I'm Scott Jennings. This is Salem. Thank you.
Fighting the left with the best weapon we have, common sense. This is the Scott Jennings Show.